5 years ago, Ching Mei abandoned me and married her first love. 5 years later, at my homecoming banquet, Ching Mei was dead drunk and said, "Julian, I knew you had feelings for me in your heart." I frowned and asked, "Where's your husband?" Her eyes were full of resentment. "A person of such lowly status doesn't deserve to enter my family's door at all." "So was it you who was blind back then, or was it me?" As soon as I walked into the airport arrival hall, I was surrounded by the flashlights of the media. At the same time, I received a text message from the staff. "Welcome back, Mr. Julian. The homecoming banquet is waiting for you. I'm a top-class chef. I was specially invited to return to my country to serve as a consultant for an important banquet." After the organizer learned that I was the young master of the Julian Group, they specially invited many celebrities to welcome me. It's been 5 years, and I've finally set foot on this land again. Everything is completely different from when I left. 5 years ago, I left so quietly. 5 years later, my return is so lively and noisy. My brother William put his arm tightly around my shoulder and said, "It's so good to see you're safe with my own eyes." I was a bit tearful. 5 years ago, I had an online feud with Henry. One was the young master of an entertainment company, and the other was a newly emerging popular young actor. With my background, this matter should have been nothing to fear originally. But my fiancée, who was of the same social status as me, stood on Henry's side. She said, "Henry is positive and hardworking. Unlike some people who are born in a wealthy family but are like a good-for-nothing." These words shattered my belief since childhood. My family and Daphne's family have been on good terms for generations. My family has always regarded Daphne as their future daughter-in-law. Before I was 23, Daphne was the whole of my life. After that, I didn't want to hear any voices from the outside world. Friends, family, and colleagues all came to visit me. But I felt that everyone was coming to watch my misfortune. Whether they were my brothers or my family, I drove them all out. But I couldn't control myself. I often spent the whole night scrolling through Weibo, allowing those vicious comments to attack me continuously. Even his fiancée doesn't support him. His character must be extremely bad. A person like him can't even compare to one of Henry's toes. If I were him, I wouldn't have the face to live. When I was tired, I would lie down and sleep, and when I woke up, I would continue scrolling. I refused to eat and would drive anyone out like a madman. I even hated everything. Why was I tied to Daphne back then? For my sake, my mother went to negotiate with Daphne's family. But Daphne pointed at my mother and shouted, "Auntie, Henry only has me. I can't let a person like your son bully him." My mother was so angry that she broke off relations with Daphne's family on the spot. Because of this, several big business deals of our family were delayed. More than once, I saw my mother standing alone by the window, sighing continuously. After that, Daphne even spread the word in the circle. Unless I publicly apologized, she would make sure I couldn't hold my head up in the future. With online abuse, family breakup, and betrayal by my lover, I lived in a daze all day long. I once thought I was a useless person and suffered from depression. So I soaked myself in the bathtub and slashed my wrist hard. Thinking of this, I still feel a bit of a stinging pain in my wrist. I unconsciously tugged at the bracelet on my wrist. William dragged me towards the parking lot and said, "People always grow up." But at the entrance of the parking lot, we saw a nervous figure. Daphne was holding a bunch of violets in her arms and said, "Julian, long time no see." Violets symbolize eternal love. How ironic. Although I've let go of the past, I can't treat Daphne with the same attitude as before. So, after nodding to Daphne, I got into the car. The car slowly drove out of the parking lot. At the entrance of the parking lot, I saw Henry. He was pacing back and forth, looking inside the parking lot uneasily. He finally took a step forward but then timidly stepped back. William said disdainfully, "This man has no ability. He makes his home a complete mess all day long. Look at you now. There are countless people who want to take a private plane to taste your cooking skills. The Shen family must regret it now." As soon as William finished speaking, Henry saw me in the car. His face, which had been full of unease, gradually showed jealousy and hatred. After seeing Daphne following the car, he quickly put on a smile. I didn't want to cause trouble, so I rolled up the car window and signaled the driver to leave quickly. I remember Henry wasn't like this back then. At that time, Daphne and I had just graduated from university. In order to gain practical experience in the entertainment industry and get ready to take over the company, our families asked us to participate in a variety show as ordinary people. Henry was a newly emerging popular young actor. When he made his appearance, he was carrying a lot of things. He was struggling to pull the suitcase but still smiling brightly. He was sunny and flamboyant, completely different from me who had always been well-behaved since childhood. Suddenly, Daphne beside me straightened up. Then she went forward to help Henry pull the suitcase. Henry smiled and said, "Thank you." The moment he took the suitcase, Daphne accidentally touched Henry's little finger. She was stunned for a moment and then nervously withdrew her hands. But I clearly saw that the tips of Daphne's ears turned red. We had been engaged for 20 years, and Daphne had never been shy with me. The scene at that moment made me a bit worried. But I knew well that in big families, marriages are always based on equal social status. With Henry's status, he couldn't enter Daphne's family at all. After thinking for a while, I put this matter aside. It was already dark when I finished packing my luggage. I was a bit hungry. When looking for biscuits, I remembered that Daphne hadn't had dinner either. So I picked up the biscuits and walked towards Daphne's room. But I saw her and Henry swinging on a swing in the night. With Henry's push, Daphne's swing flew high. Her bright laughter seemed to reach the moon. There was uncontrollable love and admiration in Daphne's eyes. I had never seen Daphne like this before. Although we had been engaged for many years, she rarely showed emotions in front of me. I once asked her why. She said impatiently, "What emotions are needed for a life that can be seen through at a glance?" I understood her dissatisfaction with the family. But since we were born into aristocratic families, some things were beyond our control. So, in order to add some willingness to our helpless lives, I spent 23 years making myself fall in love with Daphne. Henry pushed Daphne's swing again and said, "I really envy you for being so carefree." Daphne turned her head and smiled brightly. "What's so good about being carefree? I envy you more for having such a touch of ordinary life. A talented man and a beautiful woman, like a dream." I suddenly felt like I had intruded into a forbidden area. I quickly took a step back and hid myself in the darkness. Unconsciously, I crushed the biscuits in my hand. After the first episode of the program was broadcast, many people started to ship Daphne and Henry's CP. Neither of them gave a definite response. Is her fiancé? I asked Daphne to post on Weibo to clarify. But Daphne said, "Don't think I'll definitely marry you, a boring person." Before Daphne also said I was boring, but I never cared. But my intuition told me that this time it was different. So I sent a private message to Henry, telling him about my relationship with Daphne. Henry replied with a disdainful expression. In love, the one who is not loved is the third party. His blatant and self-righteous attitude left me at a loss for words for a moment. But I had a feud with Henry from then on. In the last episode of the program, the production team asked us to harvest rice. Just as we were getting the tools, I accidentally bumped into Henry, his calf hit the sickle, and blood gushed out. Daphne immediately pushed me away and squatted beside Henry, her eyes full of concern and distress. "Henry, does it hurt?" Daphne's eyes suddenly turned cold with a frosty look in her eyes. She said, "Did you do it on purpose?" After 23 years of acquaintance, Daphne didn't have even a bit of trust in me. I suddenly felt that my 23-year efforts were like a joke. I sneered and said, "What do you think?" Daphne paused, and her expression softened a bit. The strange atmosphere among the three of us made the others present too afraid to say anything. I just stood there dumbly, watching my fiancé caring for another man while treating me coldly. I felt my eyes getting moist. I tried hard to control my emotions and left the scene with a stiff body. Only then did the staff come to their senses and call an ambulance. After returning to my room, I found that my palm was bleeding from being pinched. I could no longer control myself and lay on the bed, crying my eyes out. The woman I had loved for 23 years could so easily suspect me for someone else. I was still a bit unwilling. So I called Daphne. Daphne's voice was cold. "Julian, I used to think you were forced by the family and tolerated you a lot. But I never thought you were so scheming for the sake of the family." I spent 23 years falling in love with Qingmei Daphne. But because of Henry, who came out of nowhere, she denied all my efforts. I instinctively tried to defend myself. "It's not what you think." But Daphne didn't even give me a chance to explain and hung up on me directly. After that, my father managed to get the production team to delete the footage of Henry getting injured. But someone released that clip somehow. I was hit by a huge wave of online abuse and plunged into endless darkness. Thinking of this, I unconsciously touched the bracelet on my wrist again. There was more than one scar there. After the first suicide attempt and being rescued, I was diagnosed with severe depression. My mother simply stopped working and stayed at home to accompany me. No matter what, she wouldn't let me go out. The company, which had already suffered losses in business, became even more difficult due to my mother's absence. I felt even more that I was a useless person. My mother kept trying to comfort me, but at that time, I was surrounded by self-blame and doubt and couldn't listen to anything. One day, my mother had to go to the company to deal with an urgent matter. Before leaving, she took away my phone and all the sharp things in the room. But she left behind her document bag. So after my mother went out, I followed with the document bag. On the screen at the crossroads, I saw the wedding photos of Henry and Daphne hanging high up. Daphne's belly was even slightly bulging. In just half a year, she was pregnant. The belief I had built up since childhood was hit hard again. I tried to control myself and staggered towards the company. Henry gave Daphne the grandest engagement ceremony. Love declarations from Henry filled the big screens all over the city. I had imagined the scene of getting engaged to Daphne countless times. I would lead her into a huge banquet hall. Below the stage were all the people in the industry and the media. Cameras would keep clicking. Then we would sweetly announce to everyone that the Julian family and the Daphne family were getting married, a happy form that a big family should have. But I never expected that Daphne would announce their relationship in an almost childlike way. It was sincere and enviable, but it wasn't mine. When I got to the door of my mother's office, I heard intense arguing. Daphne's father ordered Daphne to apologize, but Daphne said, "True love is innocent. I've long been fed up with everything you arranged for me." My mother also said, "Our Julian family can't handle a big shot like your Daphne family. The two families don't need to have any more contact in the future." Uncle Pei kept apologizing and said he would do his best to help the Julian family. But my mother said that if it weren't for Daphne's father's indulgence, things wouldn't have gotten to this point. She would rather see the Julian group collapse than accept support from the Daphne family. The friendship of several generations was broken in the hands of Daphne and me. I not only had a failed 23-year-long relationship but also might have destroyed the efforts of several generations of the Julian family. I felt even more that I was a failure. So I put the document bag at the front desk and went home in a daze. I smashed the bathroom mirror and cut my wrist again. Afraid that something else would happen to me, my mother arranged a private jet to secretly send me abroad while I was unconscious. When I woke up, I was lying alone in an empty villa. When the butler saw that I was awake, he happily called my mother. My mother told me that my sister had taken a leave of absence from school to help in the company and told me not to think too much and just focus on recovering abroad. My mother's words made me feel ashamed. Everyone was living actively, but I was immersed in my own sadness and couldn't extricate myself, even causing harm to my family. I suddenly felt that I shouldn't be so selfish. So I started to actively receive psychological treatment. News about Daphne and Henry on the internet never stopped. From their affectionate engagement to their wedding of the century, and then to the birth of their son. They were like a perfect couple, blessed by the whole network. At first, hearing these news still made my heart ache. I often stared blankly at their photos, letting my tears drip onto the phone screen. But my psychologist told me that when a relationship of more than 20 years is suddenly taken away, the sense of loss is something that anyone would experience. But there's more to life than just this one relationship. If I were to be obsessed with the current sadness, I might miss out on more. So I put more thought into my family. I video chatted with my sister every day, talking about our childhood stories. I sent messages to my brother William, listening to him share the joys in his life. I also called my mother, listening to her say that the company was getting better and better with the efforts of her and my sister. Gradually, I became more and more calm when hearing news about Daphne and Henry. On Christmas Eve of that year, I saw the news of the two of them showing their love again. But I no longer felt the sense of loss that love once brought me. Instead, I felt a longing for my family and friends. I walked out of the villa and called my mother for a video call. She didn't answer immediately. The laughter from the neighbor's house caught my attention. I unconsciously walked to the neighbor's door. After the neighbor noticed me, they warmly invited me in. 3 generations of their family lived in a villa. At that time, they were bustlingly preparing dinner. The white-haired grandmother was carefully tying a bib for her grandson. The hostess was humming a song and frying steaks in the kitchen. The host stood beside me and warmly invited me to sit down. The Christmas tree in the corner was flashing with the music of jingle bells, creating a harmonious and happy atmosphere. Coincidentally, my mother called me at this time. "Happy Christmas Eve, son." My tears suddenly streamed down. The male host was so flustered by my tears that he didn't know what to do. After asking the female host for permission, he brought out a fragrant roast chicken to distract me. The aroma of the roast chicken lingered at the tip of my nose. Then my sister's voice came from the other end of the phone. "Julian, take good care of yourself. Sister learned how to make apple roasted chicken today. I'll make it for you next Christmas Eve to see if my cooking is authentic compared to yours there." I shook my head and wiped my tears vigorously. "Sis, next time I'll make it for you." At that moment, I suddenly developed a strong interest in food. I seemed to understand what the so-called ordinary life flavor that Daphne had always been yearning for was. So I signed up for a cooking school. Step by step, I grew into a top-class chef. And I hadn't heard any news about Daphne and Henry for a long time. The honking sound outside the car window pulled me back to reality. I had already arrived at the entrance of the hotel where the homecoming banquet was held. But I never expected that Daphne and Henry would also follow to the scene. Daphne walked in front with a face full of impatience. Henry followed closely behind her. In the car just now, William told me about the experiences of the two of them in the past 5 years. At first, the two of them were indeed very sweet. But after having a child, the contradictions between them began to show. First, Henry's mother insisted on coming to take care of Daphne during the postpartum period. For this reason, Henry criticized the high-end maternity nurse hired by Daphne's family for Daphne as worthless. After she came, Henry's mother constantly quarreled with Daphne's family members because of different living habits. It was said that once she cried and collapsed at the gate of the Pay family's villa, accusing Daphne's family of not treating her son as a human being and embarrassing Daphne's family. It would have been okay if the days were just full of such bickering. But Daphne's family company was also challenged. Henry came from an ordinary family. Not only could he not provide any help to Daphne in her career, but also because he didn't understand the etiquette in the circle, he often behaved impolitely when socializing outside, and Daphne was often secretly laughed at by people in the circle. Because of different views on things, many wealthy young men were reluctant to associate with Henry, which affected Daphne's family business. With all kinds of trivial problems piling up, Daphne became more and more disgusted with Henry. But after all, Henry was the father of the child. Divorcing him would be like burning the bridge after crossing it, and she would be looked down upon by people in the circle. So the two of them have been living together in a state of being apparently harmonious but actually estranged until now. At the moment, Henry was stopped outside by the security guards because of his attire that didn't match the banquet. Seeing that Daphne had entered the banquet hall, he became anxious. "I'm Daphne's husband. What right do you have to stop me?" Everyone in the hall heard the voice and turned to look at Henry. Daphne's face immediately showed embarrassment and anger. She strode forward, pulled Henry to a corner, and hissed, "Go back. Don't embarrass yourself here." After saying that, she immediately turned around and left, not giving Henry any chance to speak. Henry was left alone, his eyes red. I originally wanted to go forward to comfort him, but I couldn't resist William's repeated urging. With a sigh, I stepped into the banquet hall. Daphne's eyes were red. She was holding a wine glass and staring straight at me. Henry was waiting alone outside, while Daphne was looking at me full of anticipation. It was completely different from the scene 5 years ago. How ironic life can be. I let out a long sigh and walked forward, saying politely, "Miss Daphne, long time no see." Hope burst out in Daphne's eyes. She immediately took a piece of cake from the island counter and handed it to me. "Julian, this is your favorite cake." I took a sip of red wine and shook my head with a smile. People grow up. I don't like cake anymore. Daphne's eyes became even redder, and she even started to look a little restrained, ill at ease. After hesitating for a long time, she raised her glass to toast me. Before I could respond, she drank the whole glass of red wine. Then she filled another glass for herself. But the red wine had a high alcohol content. I couldn't let anything go wrong at my homecoming banquet. So instinctively, I said, "Don't drink anymore." Hearing this, Daphne suddenly looked up. "Julian, I knew you still have feelings for me." After saying that, Daphne even tried to reach out and grab my hand. I frowned and stepped aside to avoid her. I was disappointed in Daphne. Since she had firmly chosen Henry back then, she should have been prepared to bear everything. She was the same as 5 years ago, acting on her own whim. She had no plans and, even more, no courage to take responsibility. But I was different from 5 years ago. I was redeemed by my family and healed by food. I found something I loved and achieved success because of it. This time, coming back to serve as a consultant for an international banquet was a matter of bringing honor to the country. At this moment, Daphne and I were no longer in the same world. So I took a step back and warned, "Miss Daphne, your husband is still outside." The light in Daphne's eyes became even stronger. She seemed to have misunderstood something. I wanted to explain further, but then I heard the MC calling me to the stage, so I had to leave temporarily. After I finished my speech, Daphne was still looking at me intently. After thinking for a moment, I made a supplementary speech. "I believe that everyone is a unique ray of light in this world. Maybe at this moment, you are in the fog, feeling confused and lost. But as long as you carry courage and sincerity, have the courage to take responsibility and keep working hard, you will surely find the life that can really make you shine. I said these words to Daphne. Although I looked down on her now, after all, we had a 23-year relationship. I hoped she would stop. Daphne didn't seem to understand the hidden meaning of my words. After I got off the stage, she even came to me and my family with her father. My sister and mother immediately stood in front of me. This time, Daphne's father walked in front. Julian has really made a name for himself now. He really brings honor to the Julian family. Hearing this, I frowned. Back then, Daphne's father claimed to give the Julian family an explanation in person, but actually secretly colluded with other families to snatch the Julian family's business. The feelings between big families were vulnerable in the face of interests. Now that I had achieved something, he had the nerve to come up with Daphne to get friendly. Fortunately, my mother spoke up. We cut off relations with the Daphne family 5 years ago, didn't we? But Daphne's father still smiled. It was all just a misunderstanding. The friendship between our two families has lasted for several generations. How could it be broken because of the nonsense of these juniors? I finally understood why Daphne was like this. With a father who couldn't tell right from wrong, it was no wonder she was so willful. At the signal of Daphne's father, Daphne tried to come forward and pull me again. I completely saw through the faces of these two people. So I no longer gave them any face. The Daphne family is looking for investment recently, right? The Daphne family's business had been getting worse and worse, and now it was even on the verge of survival. Today, they got in touch with an investor. If they could successfully secure the investment, it would save them from their dire situation. That investor happened to be my teacher. Coincidentally, that person is my teacher. Let's all stop pushing things too far, and I'll leave some dignity for each of us. If there's an embarrassing scene at this homecoming banquet, whether my teacher will invest in you or not is hard to say. Daphne's outstretched hand was slapped back by her father. Daphne's father looked a bit embarrassed, but he tried to keep smiling. Are you telling the truth? I raised my glass and replied with a smile, at this point, there's no need for me to lie to you. As long as you stop pestering me, I won't interfere. Daphne seemed to want to say something but was forcefully taken away by her father. I thought things would end there. Unexpectedly, Henry came looking for me. One day, I received news that there were some problems with the newly renovated private restaurant. I rushed over in a hurry, only to find Henry waiting there. In front of me, he was still as arrogant as he was back then. He even took the initiative as if he were the host, nodding to indicate that I should sit down. Then, crossing his legs, he questioned me, "Is it fun being a mistress?" I found it rather ridiculous. What kind of life pressure must he be under to have such a baseless imagination so easily? I shook my head with a smile. You're overthinking. There's nothing between me and Daphne. Perhaps my calmness irritated Henry. He suddenly straightened up, his eyes filled with jealousy and hatred. You were engaged for 22 years. How could there be nothing? If there was nothing, why would she rush to the airport to pick you up as soon as she heard you were coming back, leaving the child behind? Why would she disregard the face of the Daphne family for you and kick me out of the banquet hall in full view of everyone? Why would she try every means to please William? Even after being rejected by him countless times, she still had the nerve to beg him to arrange a meeting with you. Why would she hold her phone all day, editing countless text messages but not sending them to you? Towards the end, Henry could no longer control his emotions. The leg that was originally crossed was slowly put down. He slumped in the seat, covering his face and crying. Henry actually knew everything clearly. He just couldn't bear to admit that Daphne had completely abandoned him. I felt no sympathy at all because Henry had brought all this upon himself. After I let go of Daphne, William, on my behalf, sent people to thoroughly investigate Henry. Apart from that brief appearance on the variety show, everything else was Henry's elaborate plan. After determining that Daphne was interested in him, he deliberately hyped up their CP online, sending positive signals to Daphne. After receiving my warning, he deliberately framed me, making Daphne turn against me directly. As a big family, the Daphne family would never have accepted him as a son-in-law. But because of the child, they had to compromise. Henry, through his scheming, gradually wormed his way into the Daphne family. But he didn't expect that the class gap couldn't be erased just by entering the Daphne family. His ignorance became more and more exposed after marriage, and eventually, Daphne completely lost interest in him. Now, he could only try to please Daphne to maintain his barely decent life. Hearing me slowly reveal the truth, Henry was stunned in disbelief. A few minutes later, he choked up and said, "I'm not like you, born with a silver spoon in my mouth. Everything I have from childhood to adulthood was earned by myself. After all, I just wanted to live a better life. Is that wrong?" Everything Henry said was right to some extent. But he was not without fault. I stared into Henry's eyes and said word by word, "There's nothing wrong with wanting to live a better life, but your methods and mindset are completely wrong. You were wrong in that after entering the Daphne family, you still centered everything around yourself, and didn't make an effort to learn and integrate into the existing circle. You were wrong in that after Daphne grew tired of you, you belittled yourself and tried to please Daphne to maintain your current life. You were wrong in that even now, you still don't understand that a person's greatest strength should come from themselves." A look of realization appeared on Henry's face, and there was even a hint of pleading in his eyes. "Then tell me, what should I do now?" I reached out and handed Henry a tissue. "You should find your own value." Henry took the tissue and murmured, "I." Before he could finish, Daphne suddenly burst in. She gave Henry a hard slap. "You good-for-nothing son-in-law. So it was all your plan. You made Julian abandon me." Henry's cheek visibly swelled up. He covered his cheek and stared at Daphne in disbelief. In return, he received a look of disgust from Daphne. The light in Henry's eyes gradually dimmed. A few minutes later, he slowly said, "Let's get a divorce." After saying that, he walked out of the restaurant resolutely. I also picked up my bag and was about to leave but was stopped by Daphne. She looked at me eagerly. "Julian, you just said that it was all that man's designed for me. I'll divorce him right away. Please, give me another chance, okay?" Daphne's words made me angry. Even now, she still didn't understand the problem between us. So I took a step back and said somewhat mockingly, "Between you and me, from the very beginning, it wasn't our own will. The family made me spend 23 years falling in love with you, and made you bored with me. Henry brought novelty to your boring life, so you followed Henry to seek your so-called ordinary life flavor. Later, reality hit you hard, and you realized that the so-called ordinary life flavor was all your self-righteousness from start to finish. So you turned around and came to me, who was originally of the same social status as you and now has achieved some success. You've always been drifting with the current, wavering, and never understood what you really want. Towards the end, I was filled with disgust. You're not worthy of me at all." Daphne was perhaps shocked by my words and didn't respond for a while. I thought she finally understood. But a few minutes later, Daphne suddenly had a determined look in her eyes. She angrily said, "It's all Henry's fault." Henry's divorce wasn't going smoothly. The Daphne family blamed all the mistakes on Henry. They even hired top-notch lawyers to make him give up the child and leave the family penniless. Henry came to the restaurant and found me, asking me to help him. At this time, Henry's hair was disheveled, his face was haggard, and his face was covered with messy stubble. He looked really pitiful. But I'm not a saint. I couldn't bring myself to help someone who had almost driven me to death. I shook my head. Find someone else. In front of everyone, Henry suddenly knelt down to me. I know I was wrong. Please help me. I don't know who else to turn to. I can't fight against the Daphne family on my own. After saying that, Henry banged his head hard on the ground, and blood slowly oozed from his forehead. The blood mixed with his tears and flowed down his cheeks. The onlookers were talking animatedly. I quickly ordered someone to take Henry to the office. Henry, thinking there was hope, followed me closely all the way. After arriving at the office, I let out a long sigh and took off the bracelet on my hand. 2 glaring scars appeared prominently. I stared at Henry and said, "Do you know? I've died twice." Looking back now, I realize that cutting my wrist really hurt. Tell me, how desperate must I have been to be so cruel to myself twice? This is all related to you. If our positions were reversed, would you still help me? Seeing the scars on my wrist, the hope in Henry's eyes gradually turned into fear. After a moment, he raised his head and drank all the water in one gulp. Then he crushed the paper cup and got up to leave. When I first returned to the country, every time I thought about the past, I could still feel a stinging pain in my wrist. It was my annoyance and shame towards the past. But just now, I took off the bead string and put it back on so naturally. Even when narrating the past, my heart was calm without any ripples. I think I've really completely let go. Thinking of this, I lowered my head and smiled sincerely. Henry finally found a backer, and it was William. In William's words, being able to cause trouble for the Daphne family was something worth doing. The divorce between Daphne and Henry made a big stir. The scale of the commotion was even greater than their wedding back then. The whole internet was paying attention to this big event. On the day of the court session, William excitedly dragged me to the courtroom. Many media also came to the scene. In the courtroom, both sides were at each other's throats. The lawyers on both sides were very strong, and for a while, neither side had the upper hand. Until the Daphne family presented new evidence. The Daphne family was powerful, and they could find out the same things that William could. The Daphne family found the person who had drugged Daphne back then and got him to testify in court. Henry was proven to have had ulterior motives towards the Daphne family from the beginning. He was labeled as a bad person who would stop at nothing for money. Daphne said to the judge pitifully, "Your Honor, if it weren't for his scheming, how could a person from the bottom like him possibly enter the door of my Daphne family?" The scene erupted in an uproar, and Henry's side showed signs of defeat. Just as Henry's lawyer was once again left speechless by the Daphne family's lawyer, Henry sneered and said, "Humph, who's more noble than whom? It's been 5 years. Although your Daphne family didn't let me get involved in the company, I still know something." Hearing this, Daphne's face changed dramatically. She stood up and shouted, "What exactly do you want?" Daphne's actions undoubtedly confirmed Henry's words. The media at the scene showed excited expressions, and many even took out their phones to take pictures. The scene was in chaos, and the judge frowned, about to announce an adjournment. Henry closed his eyes, as if making a decision. He spoke first, "Your Daphne family is far from clean." As soon as these words were spoken, the scene immediately fell silent. According to Henry's account, the Daphne family had betrayed their trust and competed for projects through improper means. Daphne had embezzled public funds and used false contracts to pocket the company's money. The Daphne Group was even involved in tax evasion. Henry strongly demanded that the judge conduct a thorough investigation. During Henry's narration, Daphne tried to rush up and stop him several times but was stopped by the bailiffs. The huge scandal of the Daphne Group was thus revealed in front of the media. Henry stared fixedly at Daphne and said, "It was your Daphne family that forced me to this. Don't blame me for showing no mercy and going down together. Yes, if the Daphne family had been willing to give the child to Henry and pay alimony on time, Henry and the Daphne family would still be in the same boat. In the end, it was Daphne's self-righteousness that angered Henry and completely capsized the big ship of the Daphne group. Finally, Henry even laughed. He waved his hand in a self-destructive manner and said, "I don't have evidence for everything I said, but you can go and investigate." At this time, Daphne was so angry that her eyes were red and her body was trembling. But due to the majesty of the court, she could do nothing to Henry. William was laughing uncontrollably beside me. The scene was in chaos, and I found it rather boring, so I pulled William and left. Before leaving, William said reluctantly, "It's so exciting. Are you really not going to watch anymore?" What was there to watch? It was just a farce. The situation of the court session was posted on the internet by the media. Netizens cursed Daphne and Henry. These two scumbags, they really are a perfect match. The police must thoroughly investigate these damned capitalists. I was so stupid to have shipped them before. I must have been blind. It was a farce, and this was the ordinary life flavor that Daphne had been longing for. The more grand the engagement banquet was back then, the more ironic it was now. In the final analysis, it was all because of Daphne's ignorance of herself. After that day, neither of them came to look for me again. I also stopped paying attention to them and put all my energy into my career. But the circle was small, and news about them still reached my ears one after another. The child was awarded to the Daphne family, and Henry left the family penniless. I heard that he finally returned to his hometown. Later, I happened to see him once. It was during a trip. I saw him selling fruits at a street-side fruit stand. On that hot summer day, passers-by were in a hurry, and no one gave him a glance. The matter of the Daphne family was officially filed by the police for investigation. Eventually, the police verified that everything Henry said was true. The father-daughter of the Daphne group were imprisoned for tax evasion. The Daphne family completely collapsed. When I heard this news, I was having a meal with my mother and sister. After hearing the news, my sister looked at my wrist worriedly. The bracelet there had been taken off by me. I waved my hand at my sister and said, "Don't worry, sis. I've already gotten over it." Recently, William introduced a cosmetic doctor to me. "I'm going to have these two scars repaired." My mother also joked, "You should get them repaired. Otherwise, it will affect the picture of your live streaming too much." Yes, in order to spread the meaning of food, I opened a live streaming account and conduct cooking live streaming every night. Many netizens said they were healed by my live streaming. The number of my fans is increasing, and I feel that I'm becoming more and more valuable. One day, a fan sent me a private message, saying that he was trapped in love and once wanted to commit suicide. Fortunately, after watching my videos, he felt the so-called ordinary life flavor, and was once again filled with affection for the world. I replied with a smile, "The so-called ordinary life flavor is just a beautiful rhetorical device. Finding yourself and making yourself strong, then everywhere is the ordinary life flavor.